Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring the Tier 8 American Premium Battleship Constellation. Yep, there's a fair few Tier 8 American battleships in this game, and they just added a new one. I'm playing on the EU server, as that's where I have an absolute ridiculous amount of doubloons and resources, and I am top tier in this matchmaking. Now, I think it's important to mention that this ship plays extremely differently depending on what kind of tier you're fighting. If you're top tier or fighting lower tiers, it's, I would say, quite strong. But the second you have to face anyone higher tier, well, the experience drops basically off a cliff, and I'm gonna get into more detail on why it behaves like this. The obvious thing here is, of course, that the Constellation is absolutely gigantic. It looks like someone took a Colorado and stretched it out. It's huge, and that is most certainly not an advantage to have. It is, well, it is basically just terrible. The turning circle is 830, and the rudder shift is 15.3, but it feels a fair bit clumsier than that because the ship is just so gigantically long. There is just a lot to shoot at when it comes to shooting at a ship. The health is a pretty nice 63.3k, but note that you actually only get 3 heals. So, your battleship with only 3 heals. I'm running, of course, the extra heal perk. I'm running the standard battleship build that you basically run on everything these days, with exceptions being any sort of secondary focused ships, but you run them on basically 99 out of 100 battleships, and that is the standard, which is concealment and fire prevention and extra heal and so forth. Yeah, and adrenaline rush, you know, priority target. Very standard build. The same build that we used to have in the past. Now we're running the exact same build again, except it costs 2 extra captain points, and it's harder to acquire. That was basically what the captain rework accomplished for battleships. Now, this thing comes loaded with a ton of gimmicks, and you probably just saw me activate one of them, and that is the 10 kilometer 30-second radar. A very powerful consumable to have, and honestly, I don't like that Wargaming kind of just slapping radar on the ships left, right, and center. They're like, hey, we need to make this ship sell, let's slap a radar on it. Interesting dispersion, interesting lock-on, but I do get 1 citadel, but the guns, well, the guns aren't really that strong on the ship, something I'll get into later. The ship itself, though, besides the health and only having 3 heals, the armor on the ship is actually quite terrible. The broadsides are, of course, huge. There's a ton of freeboard to farm on this. Now, the deck armor on the upper belt is 57mm, which is quite nice, but the citadel plating is actually only 178mm, and this is really poor. I've gotten citadeled by a King George shooting AP from 16 kilometers. That's something you... First of all, how many King Georges shoot AP? And second of all, no one does, because the AP is terrible. And this guy shot AP and he citadeled me from 16 kilometers. So the armor on the ship is absolute junk. The citadel is basically waterline, so you can get quite fortunate and not be citadeled, but honestly, you really don't want to take the risk because the ship is just so huge. Also, you have a 27mm bow and stern plating, which means that yes, you'll bounce 380mm guns, but anything larger than that are going to be overmatching your bow and stern. So obviously, if you run into something like a NC who just goes nose in, you're going to struggle to do anything to him, whereas he's going to have a great time just overmatching your bow or your stern and dealing huge amounts of damage. Now, the gimmick, well, not the gimmick, one of the gimmicks. This is an absolutely gimmick-packed ship. One of the gimmicks on this ship is the speed. This thing is actually stupidly fast. It does 33.3 knots, and if you're running the speed flag, you're basically doing 35 knots in this thing. So, very fast, but extremely squishy. Now, you'd hope that the guns would be something maybe, I don't know, Georgia-esque? Well, keep hoping. These things are quite far from it. Full broadsides, like on the ones on this Baltimore, you can get some really nice volleys in, but even though these are 406mm guns, which means you can overmatch 27mm plating, they are Colorado guns. They are basically copy-pasted Colorado guns. In fact, if you look at the turrets, you can see how hilariously small these... Nice, devastating, by the way. Interesting. If you look how small these turrets look on the hull, it's because there's literally the Colorado guns that have been slapped onto this absolutely gigantic hull. Now, This is one of the reasons why I said this thing struggles against higher tiers, and that's because Colorado guns are tier 7 battleship guns. They're quite nice when you're facing lower tiers. They're okay when you're facing same tiers. I wouldn't call them good when facing same tier, especially if you're trying to Citadel battleships. But the second you have to fight higher tier battleships and you actually need a fair bit of penetration to score damage, this thing struggles. Oh my god, it struggles. The guns have a 30-second reload, and you only have 8 of them as well. This is somewhat alleviated by the fact that the turret first is actually very fast. I think it was 36 seconds. And you, of course, have battle cruiser dispersion, since this is some sort of weird version of a battle cruiser. So you do have battle cruiser dispersion available on the thing. So this kind of helps alleviate. The dispersion helps, and the caliber somewhat helps alleviate the fact that, well, the reload isn't anything special, and the AP performance most certainly isn't anything special. Trying to shoot broadside battleships and hoping for citadels, well, I found myself to just keep hoping most of the time. It just isn't very effective at punishing them, unless point blank. The other gimmick besides the speed that I mentioned is, of course, the 10-kilometer radar. But more important than that, this thing also has torpedoes. Now, the torpedoes are... They have a very nice angle on the torpedoes. They are located at the very back of the ship, which is a bit of a disadvantage when you're brawling, because the enemy ship basically has to sail past your entire huge ship before you can actually utilize the torpedoes. So the amount of times I've really gotten to use them in a brawl are quite limited. They're 2x3, they got 9.2 km range. They're basically Benson torpedoes. They do pack a punch. They hit for something like 16k, so if you can land them, it is some good damage. But ultimately, it's a gimmick that I mostly really use to. I switched to torpedoes really to figure out how fast ships are going. I use them basically to get a better idea of, is it accelerating, is it reversing, is it stopping? You know, basically using the white indicator to get a better idea of where they're aiming. And in fact, one of the things I've been saying while playing the Constellation is that I would happily trade this torpedo gimmick and this radar gimmick just for better penetration on these guns. Because I don't think this ship needs all these silly gimmicks left, right, and center with the torpedoes and the radars and the speeds and like all of 27mm plating, like all this. It doesn't need it. I think they could have just scrapped the torps, they could have scrapped the radar, and just given the guns better punch. And this would have been a pretty interesting and a pretty fun ship to play, because, well, it would be a battle cruiser with punchy guns, but a lot of vulnerabilities. And I'd be fine with this, but no more gaming, and knowing what they've done to the likes of something like Georgia, they love slapping a ton of gimmicks on American battleships. So you have a set of torps on the back that you will find very little use for. The angles on them are great, especially if you're kiting away. If someone is behind you, you can, as you can see, you can basically torp straight behind you. So the angles are very, very nice, but in terms of value, they're so slow and they're so few, and it's hard to get much. And more importantly, Constellation isn't really a ship you want to be brawling with, because, well, even cruisers citadel you at medium range, not even close range. Even at medium range, cruisers can citadel you, and God forbid if you run into any Soviet cruisers, they're gonna have a field day. And with your bow being unmatchable and your ship just being so huge, the amount of times I've actually gotten to brawl anything is extremely limited. It just doesn't happen very often. So the radar is, of course, the most useful gimmick, and that's because, well, radar is stupidly powerful. Having 10 km radar on a ship that is very fast and has 12.2 km concealment means that there are fair bit of opportunities to actually utilize it. You only get 3 charges, and as Superintendent doesn't give you all consumables anymore, it's not quite as effective as one might hope. Now this game is looking pretty terrible. I thought the Fuso's name was Admiral Gorilla, so I was laughing a bit about that. But generally, I mean, we have no caps, our ships are bunched into our spawn, and we're kind of stuck. The enemy pushed in with the Vladivostok and Gneisenau, and honestly, when the enemy battleship pushes you in this thing, if you get to 1 versus 1, you have some opportunities. Oh yeah, our CB died, and I'm not exactly really happy about it, because we lost all our spotting, and the enemy CB is, well, he's obviously spotting and harassing us quite a bit. I'm trying to push in to B. I want to push straight into B, but the issue is, you see those shuttles coming in from the left. Richelieu has a perfect crossfire on me, and as I mentioned, the citadel plating is ridiculously thin, and the citadel is quite exposed. So if I try to push nose into this Colorado the way I want to, I'm gonna get citadel to absolute by this Richelieu keeping this crossfire. So my only hope right now is basically to try to shimmy around chase the Colorado, pick up the kill, while at the same time not getting myself killed by the Richelieu. At this point, I'm getting quite desperate. We say, I type in chat, we have to push. About to lose, press W, boys, and I take a risk. I make a really risky turn, turning hard left into the Richelieu, knowing he's gonna get a shot. I don't get citadeled, I get away without it. I pop the heal maybe a bit prematurely, since, well, I'm used to having 5 heals on a battleship. But this thing only has 4, even with the extra heal perk, so I think this was a bit of a misplay using the heal too early, but at this point we just have to commit. We have to do something. Enemies 1 minute 40 away from winning, and this is going quite pear-shaped. Oh, another thing I didn't mention about this ship though is the AA. The AA's on it is actually quite good. You have 8 flak. Now generally flak isn't that much to brag about, but the worse the carrier, the more effective the flak is. Because if they eat flak, then having a lot of it is actually quite effective. If the player is good, well, then you need continuous DPS. And it has a fair bit of that. In fact, for a tier 8 battleship, this thing has quite a nice amount of AA. But don't expect to see the level of plane killing I'm doing against this tier 6 CV to happen against a tier 8 or, God forbid, tier 10 CV. You noted the Richelieu turned full broadside. I shot him and we got 2 pens, but then of course a shatter, and that is the downside of this Colorado guns. And one of the things I mentioned is lack of penetration is a huge downside. However, Richelieu made a mistake. He gave up this angle he held. He's no longer keeping the crossfire, and this allows me to turn hard in and finally give chase to this Colorado and try to give ourselves some sort of playing room here. A bunch of overpens on the Richelieu, 1 pen, a bunch of overpens, but more importantly, I'm clearing the island, I'm getting around the island, which means I can start giving chase to this Colorado. At this point, we need to pick up kills, we need to pick up caps. We are down a lot, and we're 1 minute 20 away from losing this entire game. Battlecruiser dispersion and 406mm guns do help significantly when you're fighting these lower tiers, because obviously overmatch means that, well, you overmatch his 26mm plating easily, and you have an easy time of scoring just a bunch of pens on the ships. However, Colorado does have a heal ready, and he pops it while running away, so we're getting quite desperate. They are up to 930 points, 55 seconds remaining of this game. This is looking absolutely destined to be a lost match. No way around it. However, my team has somewhat listened to me, and they have actually started pushing into the caps, trying to get something done. I score a nice set of hits on the Colorado. He's still alive though, and well, he shoots me right back, and you gotta remember, Colorado overmatches me. I'm 1 tier higher, but because of the 27mm nose plating, that Colorado actually overmatches my nose. So if he didn't run away the way he did, if he just turned around and started shooting me, he could actually probably just have killed me using all his guns, because of his overmatches. His 406mm guns overmatch me right back. We do manage to pick up some kills. I popped the radar at this point to help my Leon. I'm well aware that I probably won't have firing angles, but the Leon is pushing in and the Monahan has smoked up, so the idea is here that ideally Leon manages to pick up a kill on this Monahan, while maybe I can pick off Mayoko or something similar. They trade back another kill on us, and well, we're still losing, but we're not losing quite as sharply anymore. The big issue really is that it's 5 minutes left in this game. I call target on the Monahan. Really hoping my Leon would get some juicy hits in, but he's struggling to get any big hits in. I mean, well, it could be Leon dispersion as well. AP bombers come in, so I give both chase to the Monahan as well as try to present an unattractive target for these bombs. He eats all the flak, and as I mentioned, if the carrier eats a lot of flak, then your AA is, I would say, quite good. I mean, almost Montana levels good when it comes. But of course, when you play good against good CVs that know how to dodge the flak, then you're going to be in trouble. I load HE, I pick up the Monahan, and we get another lifeline. Quickly turning my guns around. That fast turret traverse really helping me out here, because I switched to AP and I'm trying to catch this Ise that is pushing into my Colorado. At this point, I can't afford to sit here in the cap. I tell my Leon, please cap the objective, while I go down here and try to pick up kills, because, well, I have the speed to ideally flank these ships and pick up some kills. I go for the Ise, but, well, the guns I would say, they are quite trolly at times. I only get 1 out of 4 on a full broadside battleship. I am a bit higher, honestly. I'm not even going for citadels. I just want pens on him because I think the Colorado can finish him off. And I do get some good hits in, and more importantly, I proc Implacable by getting Confederate, and I spoon-feed the Colorado another kill, which is very good. Now, as long as the Colorado keeps pushing and I push this flank, I tell him, Colorado, go camp. and I will try to push this Mayoko around and push him into him. He's dropped torpedoes. I full stop, but this is a big ship and a very fast ship, and I can't dodge quite all of the torpedoes. I take one on the nose and I'm down to 2,000 health, but I'm still alive, and that's important because my presence here is still forcing this Mayoko to disengage. The problem is the Leon has died in B, which means the B cap is completely open, and Skåne has gone to hunt the CV instead of securing the objective. But looking at the way he's coming around an island, at least I'm thinking, hey, this is a free kill for the Skåne. He can't miss, the Ruyo is stationary and he's point blank. This should be easy. I forced the Mayoko around the corner into the waiting hands of the Colorado. So the Colorado gets, well, kind of a free Kraken. But he's been playing well. He's been kiting the entire game all the way from the north, so I don't mind at all. Skåne goes down, but he basically drops torpedoes at point blank range. So I'm thinking there's no way he's not going to land at least multiple ones. And this is where the kind of reality hits me. I'm a bit baffled. Been fighting quite hard to try to turn this game into a win. And I'm completely baffled that Skåne actually missed all the torps. But now in hindsight, thinking of it, maybe I am a bit harsh, because you got to remember, there's still a torpedo bug in the game, and a lot of players probably don't know it, including this guy. He might not be aware. In fact, looking at the way he came around the corner, I think it was full turning while dropping the torpedoes. So it might actually be the torpedo bug that threw the torpedoes around. So in hindsight, he might have just been hard trolled by the bug coming around the corner, because for a lot of players, well, not everyone watches me, and not everyone is aware that there is a torpedo bug, and aware that you can't make turns while dropping torps, or the direction will be skewed. So, pretty unfortunate for him, provided he didn't just whiff on the Ruyo. 4 shells, 4 overpens, and more torps coming in. I'm very worried. If I die, we lose the game. Because they get enough points from killing me. They have 960 points. If they kill me, they win the game. So I cannot take any damage from any of his strikes. I hard turn in, shoot down his planes, dodge the torpedoes, and I shoot him again, and I get, once again, nothing but overpens, even though I'm shooting an angled Ruyo. And this Ruyo has so little armor that I decide there's no way I'm going to get the hits that I want. That I'm actually just going to expert loader to HE. I am running Halsey, so I switch ammunition type extremely quickly. I think the Citadel was at the back, and I shoot at him. It's been so long since I shot the Ruyo, but I get no Citadel, so I figured the Citadel must actually just be at the center of the ship. I'm down to 1,400 health. The enemy has 984. I really need to get these Citadel hits now. I aim for where I think his Citadel is with HE, and HE does score a Citadel on him, but I also get 4 shatters, and they have 990 points, 16 seconds. I will be able to shoot again, provided I live long enough, and the Colorado finally opens up and finishes off the Ruyo. With 700 health remaining, the enemy team 10 points away from winning, and I think something like 30 seconds remaining in the game, we managed to turn this into a win. I get the Defensive AA Expert, Confederate, Devastating Strike, Dreadnought, and High Caliber. Back in the day, this would have given me a lot of flags and would have been felt really rewarding to get all of these achievements, but of course Wargaming, against all of the community wishes, have removed any sort of flag rewards from any of the achievements, because, well, they just want you to spend more money on the flags. Honestly, I'm really salty about it, because I think it's very anti-consumer to take away the flag rewards. Regardless, a monstrous game, and I was quite happy about it. 1.6 million credits from it, 1 torpedo hit, somewhat amusingly, and 52 planes shot down, 3 kills, 2 fires, a flooding, 5 citadels, and even some secondary hits, which doesn't really happen that often in the Constellation. Detailed report, or sorry, team score wise, I broke 3,000 base XP, and I did give that Colorado a compliment, because he stayed, even though he picked up a lot of free kills, so to say, they were very important kills to pick up. And the fact that he stayed alive, kiting away from the Vladivostok and those back in the north, and then came around and still helped secure us the win, absolutely a compliment. In hindsight, I think I should have given this Skåne a compliment as well. I didn't think of it at the time, but the bug really might have screwed him over. The bug just might have just completely It's kind of sad that the torpedoes simply are not reliable right now, and I think a lot of people aren't even aware that the torpedoes aren't reliable, because I haven't seen Wargaming give a warning. Hey, by the way, this armament is completely broken. Obviously, they're not going to do that. They just, well, we'll hotfix it when we get to it. So, Hopefully people will spread the word about the broken torpedoes, because it almost cost us this game, and it would have been really, really unfortunate, especially because he's probably thinking, what the hell just happened? Detailed report-wise, 1.9 million potential, about 34k spotting, a fair bit of planes shot down, a 90-minute 23-second game. We took 107,000, which I think is pretty close to the maximum that you can take, which isn't really that much, but that's mostly because, well, you have such a limited amount of healing in this ship. Mostly shooting AP, the occasional HE volleys on DDs, but overall a strong performance. Now, I like the Constellation. Now keep in mind that the Constellation does have a fairly... It's not a particularly easy ship to play. It's not a champagne where you can just sit very far back and just left click everything and you get pretty good results, because the guns aren't that good. They're Colorado guns. The guns are actually quite a struggle to get value out of. And the ship is also very vulnerable and gets punished extremely easily. And something like the Torpedoes is basically just bait. You can't even use them. And if you want to try to get value out of the radar as well, you have to push in. But it's a ship that doesn't really push in well. So I would say the ship is quite challenging to play. It has a fairly challenging skill floor, and the skill ceiling is quite high up there. So not really for everyone. But I still think it's enjoyable, even though being up-tiered in it has sucked and has been quite frustrating because, well, you just get so outclassed by enemy battleships. But besides that, I've still had a good time in it. I still think they didn't need half the gimmicks. I hate putting radar on a battleship. I could have easily lived with them just cutting the radar, cutting the torps, and just giving the guns better penetration. That would have made it a much, much cooler ship. But we have this gimmick Fiesta, and it kind of works, even though I'm not so happy about it. Keep in mind, though, that a challenging ship to play. It is not an easy ship to play, and I don't really foresee any sort of basically competitive potential in this, because, well, the firepower is fundamentally below average, and the armor is just terrible, and if you get, well, and this is not applied to comp, but if you get up-tiered in this thing, a lot of people, once they figure out how squishy you are, a lot of people are going to be shooting this thing. And once cruisers figure out how hard they can bully you, they're also going to start doing it. Because many cruisers with good penetration, especially higher tier ones, will be able to citadel you, and that's not going to be fun at all. I can show you my recommended build, but, well, it is the standard build. It's the tank build that Wargaming have gone full circle around to. They gave us Deadeye, which was terrible, then they removed it and gave us junk, so now everyone builds tank build again, and we're back where we started, except it costs 1.2 million Captain XP extra, and it costs more to respec as well, so thanks, I guess. Right, as usual, well, first of all, I can show you the armor. Nose 27, and deck and upper belt 57. Now the 57mm plating is nice, of course, but a lot to overmatch and just a lot of superstructure to farm. So don't be fooled by this 57mm thinking you're some sort of tank. You most certainly are not. And you might think that this is the Citadel, but this is actually the upper belt. The Citadel is waterline, but it is very, very thinly protected. And now you actually have a sort of layered armor. You can see here 152mm of plating, the same armor that the Des Moines has. That's what you have on the outside, and then on the inside you got your 38mm. So not really a whole lot protecting the Citadel, and this is why, well, cruisers and battleships, even lightly gunned battleships, have no issues citadeling this thing. Anyway, let me show you guys the equipment. I run standard turret survival, and of course, because we have a radar, and radar is such a powerful module, I am running the surveillance mod. If I didn't, I would be running the damage control, but this does bump this 30-second radar into a 36-second radar. Extra range on the guns, because the turret traverse is so good. The secondary is junk. AA, this thing just, you never run it. Like, I have so many extra because I used to run it, then Wargaming nerfed it, and now there's no point running it. So the extra range, because the default range is somewhat limited, but by running this you reach 20.2. I should have probably mentioned that the range is somewhat questionable. Additional tankiness, you can get away with it because the rudder shift is pretty good and the turning circle isn't bad either. And finally, the concealment module. Captain build-wise, obviously Halsey if you have him. Expert loader, I used it a ton in the game, and by running the grease the gears, once again they made it percentage based, which means if you already have fast turrets, you gain an even bigger bonus. Another really stupid change in the Commander rework, but this means that running grease the gears on my Constellation gives me a 28.8 second turret traverse, which is literally cruiser-esque turret traverse. Very, very strong. Besides that, I run Adrenaline Rush, the extra heal and damage con buff, the Concealment Expert, and of course Fire Prevention. The standard tank build. And then we have Priority Target and finally Preventive Maintenance. You could run Emergency Repair, but I like Preventive Maintenance also because, well, you have Torpedoes to protect as well with this build. Flag-wise, it's straightforward. You want to run reduced fire duration, healing, and reduced flooding. And you really benefit a lot from the speed flag because it's percentage based, so you're already fast, and slapping this on makes you almost do 35 knots. Faster consumables is always useful. Ramming, considering how fast you are, isn't bad either. But obviously getting flags is a lot harder now since Wargaming has intentionally nerfed the way you earn flags. You can't get them from achievements anymore. You get these terrible containers that contain a fraction of the flags that you used to get. They also nerfed flag income on PTS. You used to get flags for playing on the test server. These days you don't get that either. So they're obviously really trying to drive people into buying them from the armory, because I assume people are floating too many resources for their liking. They want you to spend money. Camouflage wise, I should mention that the special camouflage that you can buy it part of the bundle, or you can buy it separately later. It actually looks really good. The Independence Day Constellation camo. I have to say that this is a very good looking camo. Art department once again swinging hard and giving us this quite great looking camo. There is a little thing that I do need to mention though. I wonder if I can show it here. A bit of Wargaming laziness, but actually if you disable the camo on the ship altogether, let's see, you can, I don't know if you can see it, it might be a bit hard to see from here, but basically that float plane right there, you should be able to see it here. That's the Kansas plane. And it actually says Kansas on the plane itself, so they just copy pasted the plane and slapped it onto the Constellation. That's why it still says Kansas if you remove the camouflage on it. You can see it on both sides of the plane. Now, small little tidbit. Overall, I've been playing the ship, I wouldn't say that much. I bought it just the other day. I think I have, how many games do we have? Oh, where's my ships? Oh no. My ship, Constellation. I played it 11 games. I'm getting a pretty good average in it. I wouldn't say it's the most powerful. I think it's a lot of fun though, because I really like fast ships, but it does have the great weakness of the gun performance is just really lacking. Maybe I'll change my mind when I play the ship more, but right now I think it's a really fun ship, provided you get your same tier matchmaking. If you get higher tier matchmaking, you're gonna struggle a bit. But even then, there are opportunities to make plays, mostly because radar is such a, well, super strong consumable, and you can use it to punish smoke firing cruisers, DDs, all sorts of things to give yourself an advantage. So yeah, not an easy to play ship, but quite a powerful one. Absolutely packed full with ridiculous gimmicks that it doesn't need, but it would still be, I'd say, a pretty fun ship to play. But as long as you keep in mind that it's not that easy, the guns are really not that good. They're fairly misleading. You think 406 and tier 8 American, you're gonna get NC or something similar, or maybe Massachusetts or something. No, you're getting Colorado guns, and well, the experience goes along with it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you enjoy the content, feel free to leave a sub. I mean, obviously, that's what drives me to be a content creator, getting people that actually enjoy the content. Anyways, thank you as always, and I'll see you guys next time.